All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon where I'm at here in the state of Alabama. I wanted to come on today and discuss with everyone my experience visiting what is called the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama yesterday. Um, so I'm not going to make this a drawn out conversation. We can probably follow up on it, I'm sure, because once I share my thoughts with you all, I'm sure I'm going to get various opinions and feedback from all across the spectrum. So no worries. We'll deal with that. Um, Again, first time making a YouTube video, kind of as you guys can see out in the wilderness here. So if you happen to see me waving off bugs, it's because there's plenty of them where I'm at. So bear with me. But let's get right into it. The Legacy Museum, again, it is in Montgomery, Alabama. And from what I understood prior to going there, it talks about and catalogs the history of the transatlantic slave trade of Africans, of course, from the continent of Africa to the Americas. And it specifically talks about the United States transatlantic slave trade. So, one thing that struck me as soon as I walked in was the initial display where you see a huge wall. I'd say probably 25 feet by 20 feet. And it's just nothing but the ocean. So it's beautiful, relaxing sound, and you see the waves crashing. And the lighting is, kind of dim. But then when you look down, there's all these heads looking up at you. And the heads are in the forms of babies, women, elders, men. Um, and one thing that hits you right away, take a moment to look at the anguish on their faces. You see anguish, you see confusion, you see sadness, fear, all of those. And I think they did an excellent job capturing that in the initial uh, display when you walk into this museum. Um, from there, you start your journey throughout the museum to different eras of the slave trade up to present day. So let me just tell you some of the things that stood out to me. One was when you go in and you look at the lynchings. That was particularly disturbing. I'll be honest with you. Um, when you see the feet of our people hanging from a tree, um, there was a display specifically where they only show the feet, but the larger photo showed all of these white folks, including young boys, standing there um, looking at the camera. They posed for a photo. And if you looked into their eyes, man, you could just see the pure hatred and evilness in these people. And in the background, I actually saw there was a few women. They were wearing their Sunday's best. They had the white hats on. It's almost as if they were going to the what do you call it? The horse races. I can't even think right now. Like the Derby. It was like a huge occasion for them, a celebratory occasion, um, which really, gave me pause to think about the 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 souls of these people, if they have one, to think of what type of person could think that what they were doing was not only okay, but something to bring their children there to not only interact with, to observe, but to teach them that this is kind of the way things are. Um, it was very revealing. When you move down a little bit more, there's another one of a mother and her son. I believe they were in Oklahoma, that were hung from a bridge. Hung from a bridge. Um, and you could tell the son was probably late teens. His mother was wearing a dress just like, she would be going to shop. Um, and all these people, again, were standing on top of this bridge while some individual went down to the shore to take a photo. And the caption says that this photo was actually made into a postcard. Let me say that again. It was made into a postcard. And take a moment to think about that. That photo was made into a postcard that obviously sold very well. There were women, again, dressed in their outfits with their hats. Like, it's surreal when you see it. And as you go down, you start reading about these individuals that were murdered and lynched, their stories. It was pretty heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, to say the least. These are innocent people trying to survive, going about their day, and they were murdered. They were murdered for no reason other than someone wanted to make an example. Someone, made an accusation, as we have learned over the years. It's always something revealed. Seems like every year, of an individual who was falsely incarcerated based off some false testimony by, some individual. That occurred quite frequently. Then you move over to the mass incarceration. That was more frequent of what we see today. However, it also talked about post-slavery Reconstruction, some of the laws that were written, straight out hardcore racist laws that were written, that if a black person was, quote, loitering because he or she, were just hanging out, they didn't have work, they were obviously looking for work, that they could be in prison. And during that imprisonment, of course, they were essentially back enslaved, made to serve long, ridiculous prison terms for doing nothing more than just breathing air. Many of them, of course, perished during this imprisonment or when they were, lended out to work. And, the displays, they really did a good job of showing you various people and individuals who suffered this atrocity. Let me just get to what I really wanted to talk about. When you leave, the final room that you go in, it's a really huge room. And from the very top of the roof all the way down to the bottom, there's the faces of various individuals throughout our history. All the way back to the 1700s, 1600s, 1700s, people I've never heard of. And they have these digital displays where you can select that photo and get a little background on them. So while I'm reading, there's one other huge monitor on the exit side. And it starts playing a video regarding all these issues that we've suffered. From the very point you walk in the museum, it starts from the very beginning, like the number of slaves brought to each state, the specific states where they were brought, and so forth. But during this video, I'm drawn to it at first. But towards, I'd say, the very end of the video, it starts talking about, mass incarceration. And then, out of the blue, they show a photo of a immigrant boy. And he has a sign, "Don't deport me." And follow that up with a photo of some immigrants who have been detained on a bus by Border Patrol. And then there's a photo of Native Americans, just a group of Native Americans. They had their feathers on, the hats. and one final photo of some individuals, immigrants in a jail cell. And I got to be honest with you all, that compelled me to make this video today. I know I just skipped over a ton of information that was available and I saw, but I'm just going to get right to it. That really offended me. It did. Because when you walk in that place and you see all of the atrocities that our folks have suffered in this country from the very initial beginning of being brought here, the way we were brought here, the brutalization, unspeakable brutalization, you know, the lynchings, the hangings, the burnings. You know, in there it talks about 4,700 to 6,000 plus African Americans were lynched. And that number is actually a low number. Somehow they felt compelled to add illegal immigrants into this conversation about enslaved Americans in this country. My people. That bothered me. It really did. And I don't see the correlation. And I'll tell you why. It really bothered me is because the reality is when those communities discuss their issues that affect their communities, you never, ever see them discuss us. Ever. They don't have museums that display their community's issues and combine it with the slave trade. And I mean all other ethnic communities. For some reason, it seems like only our community, we can't make anything, we can't have anything unless it includes someone else. Because apparently, you know, we have to make people comfortable. Apparently. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but there's a section in there regarding voting and poll taxes. For those of you who don't know, basically a poll tax is some ridiculous questionnaire or test that they made our people take, you know, post-Reconstruction. They had to take a test and pass the test before they were allowed to vote. I actually picked up one of the sheets, and here's some of the questions. For example, they had a huge jar of jelly beans. Let's just say this bottle of water I'm drinking has jelly beans in it, right? This is a 33-ounce bottle full of jelly beans. Well, the first question on there while you're staring at this bottle of jelly beans is, how many jelly beans are in the jar in front of you? You had to be able to say the exact number of how many jelly beans were in that jar, or else you weren't going to be allowed to vote. Here's a sample of some of the others, and I'm not going to read them all. How many seeds are in a watermelon? It gets better. How many bubbles are in a bar of soap? And there's like 10 other ridiculous questions on this list. Again, that's just a small sample of some of the items that were in there that would really, you know, force you to really think about just some of the mistreatments that our people have suffered in this country, and quite frankly are still very much suffering, particularly when it comes to mass incarceration. And again, I know I'm jumping around. Mass incarceration display was another one that actually started off going right at it. It showed the numbers of our people who have been, you know, wrongfully imprisoned for possession of marijuana. One brother in New York served 14 years just because he had marijuana on him. And this talks about recent mass incarceration, you know, the 80s, the 90s. And there was a couple of other brothers that they were talking about their stories. But the most detailed display out of all those was a white guy. A white guy talking about he went in, he was stabbed a bunch of times, and it was detailing how when he got out, he was like, obviously I don't want to go back. And, he was able to get out and change his life. But again, what does that have to do with the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade? It took me aback. And, folks, I know I'm going to have those come on here and say, well, these people were enslaved and, everybody suffered. This is not what that's about. Okay? It's not. And they know, the individual saying that, they know they're wrong for that. It's just this prevailing belief in this country that if someone recognizes our community specifically for something, it seems to offend other groups. But when they get recognized for their suffering, that only and specifically their groups can be recognized, and not just recognized, but compensated. And for those of you who, think that what I'm saying is, biased or whatever, you think about what I just said. No other group has been compensated and was told that in order for you to become compensated, it must also include African Americans. The sitting president we got right now was asked about reparations and asked specifically, hey, would you consider reparations? It's been the source of a lot of topic, and he's right out of his mouth, not even pause. He says only if it includes Native Americans. Now, Native Americans, you know what? I'm not even going to go there. So, listen, I just wanted to give a quick video, share my thoughts on what I saw yesterday. Y'all can leave some comments down below. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm sure they're going to be interesting. And I look forward to chatting with you all about it. I'll probably make a follow-up video on this initial video. So, all right, everybody, I'm out.